Thank you for tuning in to the Afternoon Pint Podcast. Our show will start right after these messages from our sponsors.
Hey, Matt. We're thinking of selling our home and finding a bigger place.
Oh, really? I thought you guys loved where you lived.
Oh, we do. Our family is just growing. With pets. A dog, a cat, 2 guinea pigs, a hamster.
And you're planning on getting more?
Maybe a goat or a crocodile.
Well, I have the person for you. Kimmy Najad is an experienced real estate agent who prides herself in finding the perfect home for her clients.
We're just browsing now. I'm not sure if we really need a realtor yet.
Yeah, no worries. Kimmy can help you with the comparative market analysis to help you determine the value of your home if you're planning on selling, or help you determine the going rate for the neighborhood you're moving into. She can also work at your pace.
Awesome. All right, I'll give her a shot. What's her phone number?
On Facebook, Kimmy Najad, Exit Realty Metro. Her phone number is 902-880-8429, and her email is kimia@exitmetro.ca.
902-880-8429. Awesome. Thanks.
This podcast was brought to you by Dan Lomas. That's LOMAS of lomasfinancial.ca.
Are you a small business owner who wants to keep more of your hard-earned profits and pay less taxes to the CRA? Do you want to plan for a comfortable and secure retirement? If your answer is yes, then you need to talk to Dan Lomas at Lomas Financial.
Dan Lomas is a financial advisor who has been helping successful entrepreneurs and business owners for over 2.5 decades. He utilizes customized solutions that can help you keep your earnings, dramatically reducing passive income tax.
Dan Lomas and his team will help you transition corporate wealth into personal wealth by utilizing customized executive pension plans. Dan will show you how to convert business wealth into personal wealth in a professional manner.
Don't let the CRA take more money than they deserve. Don't let your retirement dreams fade away. Contact Dan Lomas today and let him guide you on your path to financial success.
Visit Dan Lomas at lomasfinancial.ca or call him direct at 902-209-0855. That's 902-209-0855.
Cheers! Welcome to the Afternoon Pint. I'm Mike Tobin.
And I am Matt Conrad.
And I'm Sheldon MacLeod, longtime listener, first-time caller.
Thanks for calling in, Sheldon.
Fantastic.
No worries.
Great way to start
Nice
this.
to have you on the show.
Congratulations so far. You're into your second season.
Yeah.
And this is I feel like I'm in some esteemed company here. You guys have had so many wonderful people. A few people who aren't so great, but we won't talk about that. I'm just kidding.
Todd. No.
No. Todd the Beer Dude is just one of my all-time favorites, and I'm so glad to find out that you guys found some space for him at the table. Then.
Yeah, well, we do talk because of your show, and I mean, and to pay the credit back, I mean, Matt and I both listen to News 95.7 in the morning. It was voices like yours, the voices that were talking to the community that really got us obsessed and got us kind of thinking about doing something like this, and this is what it turned into. Yeah, so thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's my honor. I know we were supposed to do it earlier. It didn't quite work out, and this is the first time I've actually been to this place.
Yeah, we should actually talk about that, actually. We'll do that quickly. So we're at Big Leagues in Bayers Lake. What do you got going on there, Mike?
I am drinking. Big Leagues makes their own craft beers, which is really cool in-house, and you can buy them here. So today I'm trying the Blaze Lager.
And I am currently drinking it, but I have a flight here, so people are familiar with flights. So I get the lager, I get the wheat, I get the red, and then I get the No Doubt Stout.
There you go.
New dude about it, and I did the stout too, because it that's what I thought would be a nice little before supper drink.
Yeah, 100%.
Appetizer.
Or a meal replacement, if you will.
Yeah, meal replacements for stouts, actually.
How many locations do Big Leagues have now? Three?
Yeah.
Three? Wow.
Yeah, I
One on each
Googled
side
that
of the
to
bridge.
come over
Back when I was a kid, it was only Coal Harbor.
Yeah, and it was like the old Coal Harbor, like the one by like the Sobeys or whatever.
Yeah.
Now they have it where the Walmart is.
That was the place to go when I was like 19, 18, or I mean 19, 20. The legal age is 20.
Yeah,
19.
of course.
19. That was the spot to go when I was like just turned 19 for a few years. I lived around Coal Harbor, so.
So maybe this is a time I should talk about, and I've done this before, my theory, my plan for a graduated drinking program for Nova Scotia.
All right.
Because you were in Germany.
I know what you're going to talk about, and I love it.
And my son was going to Parkview High School, and I was working in radio, and he had an opportunity to go visit Germany. when he was 16 years old.
Amazing.
And he went over, and when he came back, he was like, "Hey, Dad, I'm allowed to drink beer in Germany." It's like, "I'm surprised you came home, son."
Yeah.
So from that day forward, it seemed hypocritical for us as parents to say, "No, you can't drink because the legal age is 19 in Nova Scotia."
Right.
And my theory about that is someone who grew up in Nova Scotia before the age where you were legally allowed to consume, you tended to go, "All right, we got to down this fast because we're going to get caught if we don't." Because, back in the day,
waste it.
somebody would have to decide who's going to claim the fine if you get caught with liquor underage. So my pitch was that we should allow young adults, 60, we say, here's keys for a car. You can go out and drive a 4,000-pound weapon and potentially do harm to yourself or others.
Yep.
But you know what? You're not allowed to drink yet. The second you're 19 and you walk into a liquor store, you can buy a fatal amount of alcohol and have zero experience with it.
That's right.
That isn't irresponsible because your whole career as a drinker to that point has been illegal.
Right.
It's not fair.
I actually feel it also leads to other things, like you don't even need to be 19. Like, you can be 17 and be like, "Hey, I got this pint of vodka that I'm going to pound down on my way to a school dance," because that's what you got to do. You got to hide it. You got to get that quick drunk on and all. I agree. Germany. So how they do it, you can have beer and wine from 16 to 18, and then at 18 you can have hard alcohol.
Yeah, he bought me a bottle of scotch and brought it back when he was 18.
That's
there you
awesome.
go.
Because he was there again. That's where he went to train for brewmaster.
Wow.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, so your son, we've
son's the
already
best place to
had
do
a
it.
show there at Burnside Brewing.
Yeah, my
we
son is-
actually are going back there soon for another show.
Now he's worked at, prior to that he was at Nine Locks, prior to that he was at Garrison, and prior to that he was at VLB, the institute in Berlin, where he learned about brewing, and he spent his entire education money learning how to brew beer, not drinking beer, but how to make beer, and that's how he's...
So cool.
This makes a lot of sense. Because when we were recording a session that I don't know, probably hasn't aired yet.
It's aired. It's aired by the time this one came out.
Maybe okay.
We'll fix that in post.
But yeah, exactly. But either way, we were there. We were recording a session, and they had a small specialty, beer that they were experimenting on, and it was a Czech Pilsner.
Yep.
And I was like, I'd like to try the Czech Pilsner. But being the beer geek / I'll admit snob that I am, I went up to the people there and I said, "Okay, so that's a Czech Pilsner." I said, "I gotta ask, is there Zotz hops in that?" I said, "If it's a Czech Pilsner, gotta have Zotz hops. Is there Zotz hops in there?" She was like, "Honestly, I don't know, but let me take a look."
Yep.
She pulled out the book, look at it, first hop listed Zotz hops. And I was like, "That's what I want then."
And he learned that because he was in Czechia.
Yeah.
Not the Czech Republic now, but Czechia.
Yeah,
he was there
Czechia,
for part of a tour of the hop distributor. So, it's kind of...
It's a noble hop.
What's wonderful about the beer industry in Nova Scotia is it is so young, but yet it's very much looking to, other areas of the world that have been doing it for so long.
How the heck did your son get into this himself? Like, going to Germany and figuring this out.
Sounds like he did the same thing I did.
That's what he
went
wanted
at a
to
young
do.
age.
Yeah.
and just fell in love with beer.
Yeah.
Now, I was a hobby brewer. I was doing that for a long time, partly because I worked in radio for a long time, and radio doesn't pay a lot of money. So in order to enjoy something at a reasonable price, I was brewing my own beer. And so my son grew up and the equipment was around. So for their graduation, again, keeping in mind that we knew that the kids were drinking, but I mean, I'm not the only dad who said, "Here's how you do the recovery position for any kid who's overindulged."
Yeah.
Call 911 immediately. Don't wait. You're not going to get in trouble because you're saving somebody's life.
Right.
Anyhow, for their graduation, they decided they were going to have a beer making contest.
Oh,
So
cool.
all of the kids all the young adults, this beer group got together and decided they were going to make beer. Well, one of his friends made one that was fortified. It wasn't good at all. But my son made one basically like a Heineken.
Okay,
and that was and it was delicious. So there was his first beer making opportunity
That was it.
out of high school, and he got the bug, and then he decided to go overseas. And this is quickly becoming the Connor episode. But
Well, it's sort of, yeah. But, it's funny because realistically, maybe I'm giving away all the secrets to the high school kids here, but realistically, I managed Noble Grape for a while.
He worked
right?
at Noble Grape too.
Oh, there you go. So
Yep.
it seems like everyone who worked at Noble Grape became a brewer, or just a geek of beer, whatever.
Yep.
So I was there, and I remember like my first week on the job. Mm-hmm. They were, we sell wine kits, beer kits, all this other stuff, and everything. And I was just sitting there, and it just hit me. I said,
is it legal?
What happens when a 17-year-old comes in here and says, "Can I buy a wine kit?" Because, I mean, it's not alcohol yet.
Nope.
Right.
And technically, I could sell it to him.
Yep.
And I'm just kind of like, why didn't I know about this when I was 16?
Yeah.
It's like, guys, don't worry. Give me a week and I'll supply the beer for the dance.
It is amazing how much that even the homebrew systems are better. The kits are better. The whole they really upped the game from the 70s John Bull by the barrel.
The canned beer, 100% malt extract.
Yeah, it wasn't great, but it did what it was intended.
There was one that came in a 2-liter Coke jug.
Yes,
and you could pick it up. What was that? I had it, and then I had it it was not drinkable.
There's a couple different brands for them, but the same thing.
You just brew it in the pop bottle.
Yeah, brew in the pop bottle.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, yeah.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah, it looked quite dangerous by the time the fermentation process was done. So I don't think I even tried it. I was afraid to try it.
Things have been fuzzing and fizzing and fermenting for years, and it's really come of age. I know I was listening to some of the previous podcasts about the history of craft beer.
Thanks for listening, by the way.
Thank you.
Oh no, you guys are doing an awesome job. You're really connecting people, and this is what it's all about. It's about conversations and meeting people, and kind of sharing stories, which is so much. People really need that in this age of social media, where we can't disagree. Well, we can all agree that we're all people and we all have stories.
Yeah. And actually, I love a good disagreement.
Oh yeah.
What do you mean by that? What the hell are you trying to get at?
Exactly, right? Like I don't want to have to. I'm not a yes man kind of person. I like it when you have a different what?
I'm far from that.
Yeah. I like when you have a
good argument.
opinion from me. Let's fight it out. But let's talk it out, and let's not just not talk, right? I mean, I want to keep the lines open. I still like you. I just don't agree with you.
Yes.
Well, there's that part of the conversation, but we get right now everything is so polarized that and I'm not going to drag politics into this, but I heard a political ad, and this is in Nova Scotia, where a minister of government was saying, you know what, we're doing what we can to help the province of Nova Scotia. And did you know that the Liberals voted against our budget? They don't want to support health care. Right. And the NDP voted against our budget, and they don't want to support health care. When in fact, that's not at all what was happening. But because you position it that way, it becomes this we versus you, or us versus them. And I don't think it helps. My wife is the most docile and loving and compassionate person. She has this dream. She said, why don't they all just get along and make things better for everybody?
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Why can't we all just all together rebel against the theater though of the House of Commons?
Well, the House
and these types of things where we're just slinging mud and not solving any problems.
The Ledge is a toned down version of it. At least here in Nova Scotia, the Ledge is toned down. The House of Commons, honestly, I would consider myself someone who's very involved in politics and very wants to learn a lot about it, know 100%. A lot about it, and everything. And even I'm starting to feel some apathy towards federal politics.
Right.
Not honestly, not necessarily municipal, not provincial. I'm still, because it's boots on the ground. But federal, I'm just they get up there and they yak at each other, they spit, and they're
clapping like they're on teams.
Oh my! It's so.
I would just wish
so
childish. A gladiator arena, just the guy, the best fighter wins. Just throw him in a ring.
The crazy thing about it is I know a lot. I know a good amount of MPs, and I know them to be good people, and I know they seem like they're people. I don't know them in the sense that obviously anything can happen, right? But I know them well enough to know that they're decent people, and it's just you see that and you're just kind of why do any of that stuff? I think for the most part, maybe I'm naive, but I think people who get involved in politics 95% of the time are doing it for the right reasons.
I would say that's even higher number. Graham Steele, former Nova Scotia NDP
fantastic guy.
finance minister, he wrote a great book about being empowered and how people get into politics is the responsible citizen. And he pointed to that fact. He says every single person who gets into politics does it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And they do it because they want to make a difference and they want to make things better. But after election number one, every single person, every single politician wants to get reelected because you can't get anything done unless you are.
That's right.
And if you're in government, it's even better because you have more tools available to get that job done.
Yes.
But the apathy part, once you're in power, it's really hard to want to have that same outlook. I don't want to call Tim Houston in some ways hypocritical because I had many opportunities to say, you're the opposition leader, this is years ago, when you become premier, what is to protect, what protections do we have that you're not going to just do everything you're accusing the current government of doing?
Right.
It's like, well, you have my word. Well,
but with the current government too, I mean, my thing now at this point is like, as I grow, I realize the mistakes I made in life. And I'm not afraid to admit them for the most part.
Yep.
Right? I say, okay,
I think that's key.
I did that. That was wrong. I think a little bit differently now. I'm not afraid to say I think differently. I'm not afraid to say, like, facts have changed. And the way that, I mean, yes, I was a pro-vaccine COVID guy. I got my shot. But maybe I was a little too harsh on the people who decided not to get the vaccines for a period in time. And as I look back on it, I say, gee, I mean, not that I'm not saying who's right, who's wrong, or anything like that. I'm just saying maybe I had a pretty nasty perception on the folks that weren't getting it, and I felt a little bad about it. Looking back, right?
Yeah.
And we don't do that.
That being said, vaccines don't cause autism.
No,
I don't. I need to make sure that's clear out there.
No. Well, that's not what I'm arguing.
I agree with you.
Like,
that
there's no reflective things on the things we've done wrong. There's no, and that's what pisses me off about the current government we have now. And that's what also makes me mad with the government that's coming in. All you want to do is accuse and blame, and all you want to do is deny. And I'm just like, what choice do I have here to vote?
And
wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah. And you've done exactly what I'm seeing consistently, which is it doesn't matter what level of government.
Right.
People are quite willing to criticize all governments and say it's all a farce. It's all not what we want as a public, so I'm just going to throw my hands in the air. I distinctly remember saying, if you don't vote, you shouldn't have an opinion.
Yeah.
But now people are saying, well, I don't have it doesn't matter how I vote because it doesn't make a difference to the outcome.
Yeah.
You know what, though? This is the thing, is I will say this until I die. It's fine that you may be apathetic, and it's fine that you think it's going to be all the same. But you know what? And again, maybe I'm naive, but I think that it's easy to they have the numbers. And if they say, like, oh, yeah, voter turnout was 36% or 40%, they're going to, voter apathy, that's what people show up to vote, blah, 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 whatever. That also means that the very, very minority of the people are deciding everything. But on top of that, it's like, I would love to see the news article that pops out that says 60% of the people showed up and voted to spoil their ballot. Because, man, that would be a news. Like, that would not be apathy. That would be like, no, we are truly rejecting everything that's going on here.
Or get that Green Party in power, one or the other, right? just have them take over majority government.
But you know what, though? I can't remember. There's a state or there's a county in a state or something like that has this system that if you put in, if there's a certain, like, threshold of spoiled ballots that come across,
right,
it's a clean sweep, and they got to pick all new people again.
It's a none of the above.
It's a none of the above.
Wow.
And I'm like, I know elections are expensive, but I'd almost like to try that for a little bit. So people might get careful, right?
But that gets back to the core of the entire challenge of the system is having people who can run who you agree with.
Right.
Because, again, if winning is the objection, the main purpose of anybody entering politics, because you can't make a difference if you're not in office.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And being reelected is the only way to guarantee that you're going to finish through because of the election cycle.
Right.
Yep.
Well, so what happens to the person? The person might change, and the perspective changes because the priorities change.
Yep.
But how do you get people to run that don't fall into that trap? Well, it's the party system. It's the way that the system is built, and it's the Westminster system that we've been running with here in Canada since the oldest democracy in Canada is here in Nova Scotia. And for the most part, we see this time and time again that people don't like who they have to vote for, so you plug your nose and you vote for either the party, the platform, or what.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I think we probably have the best system we can, because I know there's lots of talk about. I'm sure you've heard it a million times.
It's not a dictatorship. We don't live in a communist country.
No,
we
don't. No.
But I mean, there's even still. I'm talking about like people talking about overhaul with elections, like a reform for elections reform with getting rid of first past the post and all that stuff. But then when you go to proportionate representation, then I'm worried about that.
It has its own inherent problems.
Yeah,
it's not perfect.
If you run 300 people across the country, 306 or whatever it is, 308, when you run that many people and say your party only party's only elected 30 people, well, who represents whom then, right? Where does it come from? Is there nobody from Nova Scotia? Are the 30 closest people to the leader of the party all from Ontario or Quebec or Alberta? And then we get no representation anywhere else? Like, those are the other things that with proportionate representation that we have the problem, because then essentially the leader of the party will go, all right, these 3 people have the best chance of re-offering again, or the 3, these people are the ones who I like the most, or whatever. Yep. And then a whole province may not get representation. So I don't know how we improve it from how we have it right now.
I think the system works fairly well. The problem is voter turnout.
Yes.
And because people...
What was our last voter turnout for a federal
low
election?
40s.
Do you have any idea?
It was like 41 or
41%.
It wasn't great. Now, there was the by-election in Ontario. The former leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Aaron O'Toole, who stepped aside. A Conservative won that riding and said, this is a message. And the leader of the party said, that sent a message to Justin Trudeau. It was 28% voter turnout.
Yeah.
Sure did send a message, which was 28% of the people showed up, and a majority of that 28% elected someone.
Right.
So you're being represented by a
fraction of a
fraction.
Right.
And that seems crazy to me. And I honestly think it's me. I feel like I'm really the typical Canadian. Yes, you have like the diehards who are going to paint themselves in the color that they believe in, but I feel like I am honestly the true Canadian. The majority of Canadians right now, when it comes to federal politics, where it's like, the last 10 years or 9 years have been, it's like, not, some of it's been great, some of it's not been great. Some of it's been regionally great, and some of it's not been regionally great. And now all of a sudden you have someone who's offering something different. With Pierre Poilievre, there's some things he says and I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And then there's some other things where I'm like, no.
Same.
Right?
Yeah.
But at some point it's kind of like, I almost want to see a change, because it's like I want to see maybe some change in our current government, because I think it's stale at this point.
That happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, having family come over to visit. There's a shelf life,
Definitely. And 10 years seems to be that shelf life.
Yeah.
Stephen Harper prior to that. Now we're on 10 years.
Yeah.
No.
And I think we're going to be able to look back.
When I look at how my votes were cast, who got in and who got out, I mean, I was always right. Put it that way. So when I cast my vote, I was the person that got in or out many times over.
You're just a populist voter.
So I'm a populist voter. So, yeah.
But hey, there's something to be said about back in a winner.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be on the winning team.
I picked the right guy.
Yeah. But I listen to it, and I just try to listen to the issues when I'm mad about at the time. So I've been on the I don't care. I mean, I'm on the liberal side most of my time, but I voted conservative. I voted conservative more than once.
But none of us voted for Justin Trudeau. We voted for a member of Parliament.
That's true.
So you're not going to be voting for. You're not going to be
And-
voting for Pierre Poilievre.
That's right.
You're going to be voting for whomever it is carrying that banner in your riding.
And,
what do you know about them?
And having the
we'll
MLA
vote for
we
his
did
policies.
have, I mean, he was outstanding
policies?
in our community. So our MLA was fantastic.
Yeah.
And so I thought.
But you have to
very
be
highly of him.
fantastic to be an MLA.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the direction the party takes. It's always been Justin Trudeau's party.
Right.
He was in third place and said, I'm going to make this the last first past the post election, and I'm going to legalize weed.
Right.
What
He did
happened
one.
first?
Right.
Weed.
The one that caught everybody's attention, and everybody was like, well, I don't care about the other one. I got weed now.
I mean,
And I'll go on the record and say that was the smartest decision
I agree.
outside of decriminalizing, which would have been a much more fair and equitable system. But that's for another. We're
Fair
not
enough.
smoking weed. We're drinking beers.
that's right. Well, yeah. So anyway, you know what? That's politics and stuff like that. But let's actually talk a little bit about you. So you're in the media industry, because I mean, you're on radio and everything, but you're also now currently at SaltWire.
Yep.
What do you do there at SaltWire?
I'm on the editorial board. I work with the reporters who have stories that we turn into video stories, and it's a challenge because of the nature of the business. These are print folks for the most part, people who've been working at the Chronicle Herald forever. So thinking outside of the printed word is more of a pivot for them. So I like to think I'm helping to kind of work them through that, help them help me in that way.
Cool.
Where it goes from here. There is a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of digital stuff out there, and the television stations are not what they once were.
No.
Even radio has, in a certain amount of in certain parts of the country, radio stations have been sold because people's bells, for example, say it's not profitable. It's not a great business.
Yeah.
That's foolish.
That is foolish. There's always going to be a market.
To stop pause on that bell thing for a minute. They bought them saying they'd keep them.
Yeah.
And didn't. Yeah. Right. And this is where people have to really start paying attention to when these massive buys go in and you're not paying attention.
Yeah. Where I saw the fun come out of radio was probably about, I was about 5 years and managing a newsroom in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, CKBW. And the Irving company that owned it had folks who were also working with the newspaper, and they would come in and say, no, we have to see a 5 to 9% growth every year. 5 to 9%, that's what we need from a return on our investment. 5 to 9%.
And you're like, has the population grown 5 to 9%? How do you manage that?
That's the goal that they put forward. They were the ones with the money. They were the ones that put up they were paying the bills. So what do you say? Okay, you can try. And time and again, and it even happened when I ended up leaving News 95.7 back in the fall of 2020. I was one of 10 people who was let go. And I know Jordy Morgan talked a bit about the business of radio. And how corporate decisions are sometimes about managing the resources and saying, you know what, our biggest liability right now is our expenses, and it's humans, it's people, and we're going to get rid of 10 paychecks.
But maybe and not to endorse this podcast to our listeners, please be listening to Afternoon Pint, but the independent media, where Matt and I can have an extremely low overhead, we can talk issues, we can bring the news of the community to people. Maybe there's a real avenue for this, and we should really be looking at it not only here, but in every Halifax, every small, every medium-sized city, because otherwise it's
what
gone.
Mike's saying is everyone should invest in the Afternoon Pint. That's what he's saying.
We're going to announce our franchise at the end of this episode.
Yeah, exactly.
You can franchise an AP. Dirt cheap, baby. Dirt cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll get in on the low cost. I'll get on the ground floor.
Starting low, it's going high, man. Starting low, going high.
So just SaltWire, stay out of the podcast game.
SaltWire, we got this, man. You call us. Yeah,
we're good.
And I got to say, this is a really interesting medium, like the podcasting medium.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge with live radio is that you guys, if I didn't show up, we're going to have to skate.
That's true.
For an hour.
Right. So you know what? That's actually something I really wanted to talk to you about. Is you said you spent was it 7 seasons? You said 7 seasons on
2014 to 2020.
So honestly, I mean, I've been in News 95. I don't listen to it as much anymore because honestly, as much as I'll tune in here and there and stuff like that, but I don't know. I felt like they just consolidated too much, and it's just not what it used to be.
They rebranded as City News.
Yeah.
And that comes with, again, they saw an identity that moved away from the previous identity, the green brand. It was pretty strong. I think we had.
I honestly think it was fantastic. No, but I think it was. But I mean, I listened from Andrew Crystal.
Yep.
I think he passed away. So
passed away.
Yeah.
Last
So
year.
he kind of really.
He was a disruptor.
He was, and you know what? I really, really liked Andrew. Like I was young when I started really listening to it. I was probably 24, I think.
Okay.
So I would say that's pretty young to start listening to news talk radio while everyone else listens to C100. I'm listening to news talk radio. I was also drinking craft beer then too. So I'm just naturally an old man, I guess.
Yeah, back when you were on vinyl.
Yeah. So, but I started listening to Andrew, and I just loved what he had to say. Yep. I found he was actually, especially most people, most of you guys who were on there were pretty good at kind of keeping it down the line for the most part. Like, not
Gotcha.
too many
And then maybe
heavy
we don't say shout out to Rick
biases.
Howe. My God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Another
Rick,
amazing broadcaster.
another guy, obviously passed away as well
Legend.
recently.
Legend.
Legend.
Yep.
So fun to listen to.
You know what? The thing about Rick Howe is I was like, I had this love-hate for Rick Howe.
Oh, I think everybody.
Everyone did.
we all
I
did.
think
Yeah.
You had to. Because
Even the people who worked with him.
his
But
personality.
He was a lovely man. Very lovely man.
Yeah.
But I got to give him credit. I hated it, but loved his little tagline at the end.
Yeah.
If you're not upset, you're not paying attention. And you know what I loved but hated about that is I loved that it was amazing. It was so catchy, great hook to it, so good, like great marketing.
Yep.
But I didn't like it because it was almost saying like, if you're upset, then you're not informed.
Yep.
And I didn't like that because you shouldn't always be angry, right?
We had a lot of conversations about that.
Yeah.
The whole idea of it,
Yeah.
the hour of outrage.
Right.
Like how much outrage is too much outrage?
Yeah.
Well, for Rick, it never was. But I think what is lost on some people, and it was lost on me for a while, is that it was a show.
Yes.
That wasn't as authentic as Rick Howe was. That
Yeah.
wasn't always who he was. Sometimes he was twisting the blade because he knew his behind the scenes catchphrase was crazy equals ratings.
That makes total sense.
And I just was in a position because of the guy who brought me in, Mark Campbell, who was at CTV before that. He was working with the folks over there at Steve Murphy, and so he came from a TV world and into radio. And when I started at News 95.7, it was in the summer of 2014, and I worked there in the newsroom in 2010. And left to go take a job with Q104. I was working with New Cap in the newsroom. Wasn't an on-air position, but I was on the air every once in a while. And Mark Campbell called up and he said, "Hey, bud, how would you like to come back and work for us?" He said, I've got a slot for you, but part of it is you'll fill in for Rick on his vacation in the summer." And I had said I'd never done talk radio in that way. The radio station in Bridgewater, every Sunday there was a Sunday show where I did an hour-long news magazine kind of thing. So I was used to talking to people for 10, 15 minutes at a time about any topic.
Yeah.
So it was said, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
Then, I landed there and Rick was, the guy who said, "Oh, here, hit that button, but you're a talk show host." That was how much, that was his training. You go for it, bud.
That's fine.
But I was there filling in for him. And then a few months later, actually just before the Labor Day weekend, I got a call saying, "How would you like your own show?" This is the aftermath, less than a year after, Jordy Morgan and that group was let go.
Yeah.
So there was a gap.
Bittersweet.
They were playing programming
Yeah.
from Ontario. And quite honestly, the sales team said, "We got to get that off the air because the advertisers don't want it."
No.
They're saying they're going to walk.
Yep.
So I contend to this day, I started on that talk show without the company actually really knowing. That I'm not sure that Mark Campbell actually had permission from Rogers to put it on in the afternoon.
That's awesome.
If he did, he didn't really say, or if he, maybe he didn't tell me otherwise because
But those shows mean a lot to a lot of people, man. Yeah.
I love them, but
when you
not
listen
from an
to folks calling
entertainment
in,
standpoint.
and you just get them,
Oh,
they
yeah.
just get to speak their mind for a point, and it means the world to folks.
And he said deliberately to me, Mark Campbell, "I don't need two Rick Howes.
Right.
I don't," because I said, "Well, what do you want? What are you expecting?" He said,
Yeah.
"I don't want two Rick Howes." Fair enough. So
Yeah, you
that's-
were definitely more contemporary kind of.
So that's why I kind of took a different way, and it was Mark Campbell's idea to brand it as smart radio for the smart people. Right?
You know what though? I've still I've heard you let into a couple people here and there.
Oh, only ones that deserved it.
Yeah, exactly. There's been a couple times where I was like, "Ooh, he get a little angry with that guy there." You can tell simply, but you can tell Rick same thing. Rick's like abrupt hang up, bye bye.
Yeah.
That you
Oh,
knew
yeah.
Rick was mad. And that quick little bye bye.
Yeah. Frig.
But yeah, it's 7 years talking to people. Just I mean, obviously you had to do things. You covered news stories and things like that.
Yep,
But
yep.
there was just happy hour basically. People calling in.
I actually, if you go back, the first 6 months of the show was actually from 2 in the afternoon until 6. So it was 4 hours
Yeah, it's long.
of radio. And I had a producer who was basically working as the summer student at Jack to work as my producer, and she just kind of moved over again because there was no budget for what we were doing. So it was like 4 hours, and I was booking it every day. I mean, I got to say, it was a treadmill. It really was. It was always called a machine. It was a beast that needed to be fed. And for 4 hours a day for 6 months, I had the conversation with Mark Campbell afterwards. He said, "Really glad we didn't have an archive of those." but what it did was, you think now of a 2-hour show, I went to boot camp, and I just worked it out on the air. Like, God bless them for giving me the chance.
Seriously,
Appreciated the opportunity, and I really
you're still
took it
doing your own
seriously.
thing now a bit, on Facebook and such.
I do a little bit of that. I do some work with Eastlink. I do. There's a couple of shows I'm involved with there. I do announcing at a drag racing track. I mean, that's again coming back from being in radio, where there's not one job that's going to pay you enough to get, to raise 2 kids.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially ones that want to go to Germany.
Exactly. Yeah. We know about that with the podcast.
Yeah, we made that a goal. Got to Germany with a show.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
we want to do. Yeah, we have a couple.
one of our ideas. Yeah,
We want to do Germany. Like to do London.
Yeah.
I think this is like prime London kind of
I
thing.
agree.
we're thinking about Lunenburg.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Berg's got a new radio station coming up.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yep. There's a new radio station about to launch there. It was a chap who used to work for Maritime Broadcasting who's got a license, and he's just about ready to launch.
Oh, well, that's really
And
cool.
Scott Clements is his name.
So he's launching an independent radio station.
Yeah, a private commercial radio
Whoa,
station.
I'd love to talk to that
Down a
guy.
little bit.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, he'd be more than that.
Yeah,
I'm not
man.
going to speak
Well,
on behalf of him.
No,
or for him.
but let him know.
Yeah.
We'd be interested in having a chat
No,
with
I
him.
think
because
he would
that's
be
so
more than
cool.
happy.
Send us that
to-
name. We'll reach out.
I saw
Scott
that movie
Clements.
Pirate Radio once,
Oh,
and I was just, I just wished I was those guys.
And for me growing up, it was, Peter Zosky
Yes.
and driving around in my delivery truck, delivering light bulbs for a company. And I was like, that'd be a pretty cool gig.
Yeah.
So-
yeah, and Private Pirates, Howard Stern. I gotta say that was a movie I loved too as a kid. Right.
The radio movies like FM. That's going way back.
FM. I never seen that. No.
It's of a different time.
Sure,
But
yeah.
it was entertaining. Of course, Good Morning Vietnam. Which
Yes, of
was,
course.
Was just
Amazing movie.
Robin Williams on coke
Yep.
or whatever he was on.
He did a hell of a job.
But he was a hell of an entertaining fellow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I started in radio in 1989,
Okay.
and literally with tapes and records. And through the age
Where'd you start?
my first radio job was at CJVR, Melfort, Saskatchewan. I interned there as a student. Then I left there to take a job at CJSL in Estevan.
Okay.
And I worked there, and the program director started his first day the same day I started my first day doing evenings on a country station. After the 6-month probationary period, he didn't make the cut, so they put him back on the air, and I got laid off. And I had graduated high school in Nova Scotia, and I thought, this is in 1989, early 1990. I'm like, I know lots of unemployed people back home. I'll just go hang out with them while I figure out what to do. So then I made the trek back to Nova Scotia, started working part-time at the little radio station in New Glasgow, the hometown station of CKEC. Tom Romke was there in the day, and Don McKenzie and all these great voices, and Rod Mackey was the program director. And that's the station they gave. Anna Maria Tremonti got her start there. A whole litany. Frank Cameron, he started working at that radio station. So I was there for about two years or so, then ended up in Truro, worked in Truro at CKCL, AM 600 until they went off the
AM,
air.
there you go.
AM radio.
Yeah.
Then it became The Mix, and then it's Cat Country now. And then I went to Bridgewater in 1999. They wanted me in the newsroom because of Y2K, because, they wanted to make sure that they had that covered. So I
He just went off the air suddenly.
I moved to Bridgewater in 1999 to stay for 5 years.
Yeah.
And-
Just pause for the listeners for a second on Y2K, man. That was just, that's something we never brought up before.
That's
that was
true.
a
We've never talked about
a
it.
crazy moment in history that I don't think gets enough light.
Yeah, I know. It was
Everyone
crazy.
just thought the computers were going to stop
Well,
working.
it was a coding issue because the coders all said, well, we don't need the full year because, it's 1983 or
Exactly,
1984.
yes. Right.
So the worry was when it went back to zero,
Everything would go back to 1900.
there'd be no banks, so that airplanes would fall to the sky.
Oh,
and,
man.
this whole litany of problems. But what's not, I say this is a classic reason why Canadians are different than Americans. Because what happened was, in order to fix that gap they hired overseas companies. They had coders in India, and there were probably 2 or 3 other countries that they had people working on this problem nonstop right up until midnight of 1999.
Yeah.
And that built the entire tech boom that we ended up with, because there were all these people who were in the industry and were working.
Yeah.
And Americans went, wow, look at that. Nothing happened on January 1st, 2000. What did Canadians say? What a waste of money that was. Nothing happened. But what was missing was the knowledge. The knowledge that people worked their asses off and spent a lot of money, and that made data cheaper, it made computing cheaper, and that's how we ended up with the tech boom that later decimated a bunch of people's incomes in the early 2000s.
Seriously, yeah. That's so that's Y2K. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So they had you on the radio like until like midnight? Basically?
No, I was on call. So I
okay.
just couldn't go out that night. So.
Okay. Really boring New Year's Eve.
That was the least exciting New Year's I think I've ever had.
There you go.
But I got paid. I still had a job.
That's all that matters.
Yep, in the end.
Yeah. So okay. So then you you were in Bridgewater, and then so you eventually obviously moved to Halifax. You said it was 20. What was it?
2009. I was actually in 2009. It's a long, complicated story, and I'm not going to implicate the person who was an asshole, and he knows who he is. But I left that company and had an opportunity to start working part-time at Maritime Broadcasting in Halifax.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I was working in their newsroom. Just thinking who was there at the time. Deb Brent was in the newsroom. Katie Day, she was just recently on Canada's Most Talented or one of those shows.
Okay, yeah.
She was working at, I think at the time it was, what do they call that? It was a classic rock station. It's now 89.9 The Wave, but at the time it was more of a classic rock thing. So, and it was while I was working there that Mark Campbell heard me at News 95.7, who called me up and said, hey, I want to offer you a job. So I was there from 2010 to 2011, and then I went to, as mentioned, working for NewCap at Q104.
Amazing.
So the with being on the radio, I mean, you guys on News 95.7, I should say, clarify, you guys had your regulars.
Oh, jeez.
You're like either unemployed or retired folks that called in all the time. Like, you must have like your favorites and your least favorites that called in.
Yeah, there were a couple that called me and never called back. Partly because, and I won't take credit for it personally, but there's one guy, I don't know if he still calls, but Tony is from the United States.
Oh.
Very gruff. He called Rick all the time. He called me a couple of times. And after he hung up, somebody else called in and did their impersonation of Tony on the air.
Okay.
And it was good. The guy he really had it down. But Tony got so pissed off that he never called back.
Oh, no way.
Shit happens.
American.
Yeah.
Can't take a joke.
Any of those callers you ever kept in touch with?
Not really.
No?
Not really. There was one chap who was really struggling. He was a veteran, struggling with his sobriety.
Sure.
And he called often, and he was often intoxicated. And I, did what I could to try and help him.
That's cool.
And that, well, what do you do, right?
Yeah. There's only so much you can do on the radio talking to a guy, right?
Yeah. And if you call up and you ask for advice and you don't follow it, that's not on me.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think they call that an ask hole.
I like it.
Yeah.
Asshole.
Yeah, an asshole. Someone who asks constantly for advice and never takes it.
So what should I do if that happens to me?
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't know my Uncle Greg. I don't even care. I'll throw him right under the bus.
Oh,
my
no.
Uncle
Greg's coming in.
Oh, definitely. Because he listens to News 95.7 and he's called in, I think, every single host.
His Uncle Greg hasn't figured out how to listen to this show yet.
He still hasn't figured out how to listen to the show.
Maybe this episode will be his first.
Maybe.
You'll have to send it to him.
I will.
Yeah.
But, he's definitely, he must have called in on your show.
Quite possibly. We didn't use last names for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But we did know there were some, and I'll give full credit to the producers, all of the folks who ended up answering the phones and putting up with a lot of crap.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of really rude people.
Yeah.
Angry people.
Yeah.
It's not always about the outrage, but sometimes the folks felt it was their prerogative to take it out on the people answering the phone.
Right. Yeah.
And
And that's how they kind of screen calls. So you'd have to get through a person to get to you, kind of thing. Yeah.
I had a really interesting talk with Steve Murphy, who you should get on this.
No, we want very much.
Talk to Steve Murphy.
We had we've had people adjacent to him on, and we want to very much.
And he put a book out recently.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. I'd like to read his book first and then have him on.
You will love it.
Yeah.
The book is about the business, the industry, but it's also about the change in information technology. I'm not going to sell Steve's book.
Dude's a legend, though. Dude's a legend.
You just have to pick someplace close because he doesn't drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I
He
remember
walks
that.
everywhere downtown.
Because I used to see him all the time at Lion's Head.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Studio L.
Yeah.
That's what they call it.
Studio L, yeah.
That's right. We could potentially do it at the Lion's Head. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
A great spot.
He's a legend. Honestly, the interviews you watch him do, he's so straight to the point, and he's like a dog with a bone. He's re-asked questions. I remember through a lot, Steve McNeil, whatever you want to say about him, whatever opinion you have of him, went through, he went through a lot in Nova Scotia when you think about it. He had to deal with COVID. He had to deal with the teachers' strike, the first teachers' strike. And I mean, my wife's a teacher, and I was supporting her, obviously, in her,
But who
I will
with
say,
the films, Nova Scotia thing?
The film industry.
That was huge, right? The film industry.
But McNeil went through all of this.
You're going to have empathy for a guy for self-inflicted wounds, but go on.
Yeah, well,
No.
I don't disagree with you on that.
I don't have. Listen, my wife says I lack empathy, so
Yeah.
I don't have empathy for him. All I'm saying is he went through some pretty big moments, some pretty big changes, and dude's freaking veins are ice cold. But that was just McNeil, but I was mostly giving Steve a compliment because Steve obviously talked to him through
lot.
All of these things.
Absolutely.
And Steve didn't let go.
Yeah.
He asked questions, and he would call people. He called them out, hey, you didn't really ask that question. You didn't answer that question. Honestly, when he retired, I think Atlantic Canada really took a
whole country
huge hit.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's a little thing called integrity.
Yeah.
And it's not that little.
Yeah.
And he has it in spades.
Yeah,
He was always really good at staying laser focused, but he learned that. And you get the book.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
the book is a great
That'd be a cool read. Yeah,
It
I'll
is
check
a
it out.
cool.
No, I definitely will. Yeah. So anyway, that is what it is. But the So you must have. I mean, we're gonna probably wrap this up fairly soon. But I'm actually interested in hearing maybe what's one of the craziest things, one of the craziest calls you got, or I'm give us the highlight reel,
Whatever you're allowed to say.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Talking to prime ministers was always fun. I spoke with Stephen Harper before he lost. Spoke with Justin Trudeau before he became elected, and that's something that Steve Murphy and I have in common.
Cool.
That once elected, Justin Trudeau wouldn't do an interview with either of us.
We've been trying to get him on this podcast,
trying to get him on here.
too. Honestly, we
heard back from his team.
Heard back from his team, and the girl was fairly receptive to it. And then she was getting a little bit too much in the weeds. Some of her questions or worries about us. Like, just check out the show.
Just go listen in. Yeah. No, I know he did Ryan Jesperson's show in Calgary. Was he Edmonton?
Yeah, he did a guy in Ontario too. Another fellow with the podcast. I saw. Yeah.
But he also did radio, and
right.
So he's plugged into that. So politicians, they all. Steve Murphy points out in his book, they don't always answer the question you have for them. And that was probably the line you were referring to when he said, you've answered a question I haven't asked.
Yes.
That was a classic line, and that was during I think that was the Liberal. That's
a great.
That was the provincial election,
I like that.
And he was talking with someone who was running for office. But as far as the craziest guest, I mean, I was so lucky to talk to so many people, not just famous people. For me, two guests stand out, one of whom was a man by the name of Landon Webb. Now, this is kind of it's complicated, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but he was being held in an institution because his mother felt he was not mentally sound enough. So under legislation in Nova Scotia, there's a provision that a parent could keep you in essentially a lockup in an institute. He kept running away, and we kept hearing about this kid who was being brought back. Well, eventually I got to speak with him, and had set up an interview to speak with him on the radio for the Monday coming. And they canceled that, but they also changed the legislation. I didn't get the conversation, but because of that, Landon Webb is now a functioning member of society, free from all of that crap, living his life as a normal human being. It's a footnote in my career, but it's a major thing for the entire mental health program and system in Nova Scotia. The oddest one I ever could recall was this university professor that we had arranged for a conversation with, and I can't even remember the topic, but after every sentence, the guy would finish by saying, "Over." It's like, and I'm like,
I would do that just to troll someone.
And that's what I thought at first. Is this guy screwing with me?
Yeah.
But every single time he'd finish his sentence, he would go, "Over." What do you do, right? Like, I just at the end of it, I hung up and I said to the producer, "I'm not sure what we just witnessed and what we experienced together, but
amazing."
You should at the end of
get
it
that guy on our
just
show?
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
yeah. Don't know what we just witnessed, but over."
Yeah, seriously. So what about the craziest call-in that you had?
There were trolls, lots of those. And the people who had an agenda.
I mean, the bad side. I mean, I love watching that stuff on YouTube. Those clips are the greatest when the trolls get into the community TV station and act a fool. I know it's frustrating. I'm sure on the other side.
It is terribly frustrating. And I just know myself, and I got to know myself well enough that there were times when people would say, "Oh, that was really great," and I feel shitty.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? The world's full of enough shit.
Yeah,
that's true.
Let's try and shine a light on the good things. Put people in the right light. Lift people up. I mean, it's not Pollyanna. I had detractors and I had people who criticized me for it, but I only had one thing in my head, which is fuck them.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it for them because they want to pick on me and hate me. Fine.
Yeah,
I don't,
exactly.
You can have your opinion. I don't need everybody to love me.
Yeah.
But I'm not in a position here to take criticism from somebody I don't respect.
I honestly think that you're gonna, anytime you put yourself out there, you're gonna have criticisms and stuff
For sure.
like that. Like, for Frank's sakes, we put a picture up with us holding cans the other day on social media, and someone was like, "That's not exactly a pint, is it?" And we're like,
and I looked at his profile pic, and he looked like Liam Gallagher from Oasis, but not quite. So I said, "You're not exactly Liam Gallagher." There you go.
There you go.
But
but yeah, it was just one of those things. Like, okay, really? Like, is that what you have on us? The can of beer we're drinking. It was at the Garrison release that we were at.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just foolishness. But anytime you put yourself out there, you're gonna have
a bit of fun.
There are two things I really admire, two types of performers in my lifetime that I've come to respect in a big way. And that is stand-up comedians and magicians who seemingly have nothing in common. But a magician tells you he's going to lie to you and then shows you something amazing.
Right.
Stand-up comedian tells you the truth and gives you something amazing.
Yeah.
It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, for sure.
And I did act twice on my show. I was able to do magic on the radio, which was really kind of fun. So, just,
how do you do magic on the radio?
It's very complicated, but I can remember 3 different instances where I had somebody do it, either a math trick or some other.
Okay.
But there's a guy named, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he was on Canada's Most Talented. And he did a trick and then said, "Go to my Instagram page right now." And he had planned it all out, and it was brilliant. It was a lot of fun, and it worked out wonderful.
That's really cool.
So
We haven't had a magician.
But we can. There's a magician in Dartmouth that's just been on the Canada's Got Talent, that $1 million prize or whatever. What's his name?
Vincent.
I want to get him on the show.
Yeah,
right. So if he can hear us right now, I think he can read minds. So I hope you will be on soon, sir. And so we'll get a magician.
Yeah, we'll get
right.
one.
That'd be fun.
That would be.
Yeah,
that'd be really cool. Honestly, you know what? I'd say we could probably wrap this up. I mean, I could sit here and chat with you all night. But
we could.
Well, this isn't my show; it's your show.
No,
so
but
you're in charge now.
You're very much invited for a round 2 anytime.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
please, we'll do the cheers thing again.
Do the cheers.
Awesome, and thank you to Big League.
Yeah, thank you.
One
Thank
other
you.
side note: the food here smells amazing.
Yeah, we don't eat
and I'm
when we do
starving
this.
because it's supper
But holy
time.
smokes.
So it smells awesome in here. So if you get a chance, pop on down to Big League. It smells like they have really good food.
Well, Matt
And beer.
Mike, I wish you nothing but success, and I hope that your wildest dream comes true and it becomes a nightmare. I mean, a full-time job for you.
Thank you,
Because
Sheldon.
that would be a terrible thing to have happen, which would be just to talk to people every day. Because you know what? I've been blessed with that curse.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. And people don't actually understand how much work it goes into trying to have a conversation.
For sure.
You know,
but it's
that's
rewarding.
a good thing. I know we're kind of ending, but it's a valid point. I mean, with us, it's we have two people to lift the load kind of thing, and Mike does a lot of the editing. I do the social media, do some of the video editing, things like that. But the editing is a big part of it. Obviously, the voice editing, the podcast editing, and then and then we have the business side of it. Like we both search out guests.
Yep.
We both have to do research on those guests. Really, like I didn't want to do a whole lot of in-depth for you because I wanted to kind of feel like your show.
We knew we could talk to you about anything, so
Yeah,
we're like, let's
exactly.
just go into this and have some fun.
I'll share. I learned this from someone, unlikely candidate, a guy who's in real estate for 50 years of his life, but his first job was as a garbage man in New York City. You're thinking Oscar the Grouch. This guy was, he said he was a drunk who had a severe alcohol problem. And if you want a shitty job, pick up garbage hungover in New York City.
Oh, fair
Oh,
enough.
But
imagine.
what he taught me was if you ever struggle with small talk, forward. That's all you need to have to remember. Forward. Anyone you talk to, anytime, you talk about their family, their occupation, their recreation, and their dreams.
Oh, that's cool.
And I hope
Like that.
your dreams come true, guys, because
Thanks, man.
it looks like you're having lots of fun.
Second cheers.
Yeah,
Second cheers.
second
Here we
cheers to
go.
that one. Cheers.
Thanks for being on the afternoon pint. We hope to see you again.
Oh, my pleasure.
The
Thank
very
you.
best.